Why do I always second guess myself? Well, it's time to start trusting your gut and lead with confidence. Welcome back to the Secure Husband Podcast. Bruce Abbott, certified professional coach and founder of SecureHusband.com, where I help good men stop feeling like they're always wrong. There's nothing worse than that nagging feeling, that whisper in the back of your mind that always says, I'm wrong. Am I doing the right thing? Should I have handled this differently? Maybe I should have just kept quiet. Maybe I should have this or that. You know the feeling I'm talking about. It happens with every conversation that you have with your wife. It happens at work. It happens when you're parenting. Sometimes it happens with acquaintances. Maybe in your marriage, you start to set a boundary and immediately regret it. Or you try to speak up and suddenly you feel small, like you're walking on eggshells. It's that voice in your head that second guesses everything. You thought you were being accommodating. You thought you were being kind. But maybe she thought of you as being controlling. You thought you were clear, but maybe you were told you were too harsh. You thought, hey, this is a normal request I'm asking. And now all of a sudden your wife's upset and you're rethinking your whole approach. You are second guessing now everything. But there's something underneath all that self-doubt. Why we find ourselves second guessing always. And the key to it is building self-confidence, self-trust. It's not arrogance. It's not blame to others. It's a healthy self-worth. I get a lot of inspiration for my podcast from my daily conversations with my coaching clients. One of my guys was talking about a painful pattern that he gets in where he has zero trust in his own decisions anymore. So he starts feeling like I'm always wrong. I walk away from every conversation, second guessing myself. Even when I think I'm doing the right thing, somehow it turns out I wasn't. Now, he's not a pushover by any means. He's not weak. He's just been slowly conditioned over years to doubt his own instincts. And why is that? Well, in his marriage, every disagreement turned into a debate about his tone, his timing, his words. He told me today, I could say that the sky is blue and she'd find a way to make me feel like I insulted her. And over time, that dynamic will wear you down. So what happens? He stops speaking up. He stops leading. He stops initiating in the bedroom. He stops initiating crucial conversations. He stops trusting himself. So we have to work with that pain that we feel. Second guessing, it's not just about indecision. It's about a disconnection from your own self-trust. It's a disconnection from your truth and your worth, your inner strength that you have. You don't trust yourself anymore. So what do? Well, the first step, as always in the Secure Husband process, is notice. Just notice where you don't feel safe being you, where you're not trusting your decisions. And when I say safe, I don't mean physically safe, and not even really emotionally safe, like in an explosive way. I'm talking about energetically. And that's tough because sometimes you feel like, hey, I'm showing up in strength, but then I just get shut down. You feel the desire to express a need, and she says you're too demanding. You share a boundary. She accuses you of being unloving and manipulative. You ask for affection. She says you're being needy. See, that's what was happening with my client. And I've been in that situation before myself. So what did he do? He shrinks. He gets small. He second guesses. He double, triple checks his tone. He rehearses conversations in his mind over and over before he ever has the conversation. And after every interaction, he's obsessed about whether he made the situation worse, and that'll drive you crazy. I asked him, when was the last time that you fully felt confident in a conversation or a decision? And I ask this not to shame, but just to bring it to the surface, bring awareness. And he thought about it for a moment and said, I don't even remember. I don't know, maybe years ago. That's when I knew. This wasn't just a marital issue. This is a self-worth issue, identity, emotional safety. So I told him, okay, let's just notice. Let's stop trying to fix the doubt that you have in your mind and just start listening to what it's trying to tell you. Because from there, we bring it from the subconscious to the conscious. And once we're aware, then we choose to take care of that part of you that's afraid to speak up, that's immersed in self-doubt. And we choose to care for that, not shame it. Because most men hate that they second-guess themselves. I do. Being wrong, being weak, overcorrect, maybe get angry, become domineering, or collapse and become passive aggressive. And many of my guys are caught in that pattern of all three of those. So you're trying to stay strong, but then something would trigger you, then you'd shut down or explode. And then the spiral of guilt and shame and second guessing would start all over again. So here's where you get to choose to do something different. What if that voice inside of you that's always afraid of doing the wrong thing is actually a part of you that needs love and attention? That's truth. See, when you can understand that, you realize that that voice inside, that doubting voice, that's not your enemy, that's you. That's that scared little boy inside of you, your inner child, your deep core feelings, your true subconscious self, trying to keep you safe. Because somewhere along the line, somewhere in your childhood, you learned if I make a mistake, I get in trouble. And saying the wrong thing equals mistake equals trouble. If I upset someone, they'll get mad. They'll leave. They'll yell at me. If I don't do it perfectly, they withhold affection, attention. I feel unlovable. So now we just look at that part of ourselves with compassion. And instead of trying to shame that part of ourselves or silence that part of ourselves or beat ourselves up, we now take care of it. That's where you begin self-trust. That's where healing starts. If you're a regular listener to this podcast, you know it's all about that little boy inside. It's your deep core, your feelings, your subconscious. Because somewhere you experienced circumstances that taught you that, or else you would not be exhibiting these behaviors and thoughts. So now you meet that little boy inside who learned to play small, who learned not to trust. You meet that younger you deep in your core that understood confidence was dangerous. Because a lot of guys I work with grew up in a house where everything depended on how one or both parents felt that day. If mom was in a good mood, it was safe to be playful or expressive. If dad was anxious or overwhelmed that day, any emotion was seen as too much. So you learn, don't rock the boat, don't speak up, don't have needs. You were not born indecisive. You learned it. You were conditioned to be indecisive because that's how you survived. And I give homework to my clients, visualization work. I want you to imagine a little boy inside of you. It could be at any age. And maybe picture a moment where you felt the wrath of a caregiver, a parent. Maybe you're standing in the hallway after being yelled at by your parents. You're confused. You're alone. You're asking yourself, did I do something wrong? What did I do? What did I say? So that boy right there, that little boy, he's still inside of you as an adult. And he's been making decisions ever since. So after we do the homework, I'll ask my client, what would it look like to show up for that boy now? As the adult man that you are at this moment, you show up for him with compassion. You tell him, hey, little guy, you're safe. I've got you now. You had to do this when you were little to survive, but you don't have to do that anymore. We're adults. And you go to your divine guidance for truth, to overwrite those false core beliefs that you have deep inside. That's where healing starts. When you dialogue with your higher power and you dialogue with that inner child inside and you connect each other, that's healing. You don't need your wife to reassure you. You need to reassure yourself. And that's how you do it. And that's how you start to build self-trust again. That no matter what you say, you'll be okay. No matter what you think, you're fine. You need to set a boundary, you can with love. See, you dialogue with your higher power, that spiritual guidance to find out what that next loving, aligned action is. Maybe it's have that conversation without getting flooded, where you can soothe your nervous system. Maybe you set that boundary. Maybe you no longer tolerate the intolerable, but you break the cycle. It's a loop. Second guessing is a loop, but you have the power to break it. See, once my client started seeing the pattern, it became clear how much power he had given away. Because every time he doubted himself, he'd wait for her reaction, and then he would adjust based on what she needed, and then blame himself if conflict happened. And it just went round and round and round. So if she was pleased, he felt good. If she was upset, he was triggered. And I told him, that's not love, that's emotional codependency. See, when you start to self-trust, when you start to feel your sense of self-worth increase, you can speak your truth, and no matter what her reaction is, you are able to stay grounded and stay present. And he got that he didn't need to win her approval to validate his choices. He just needed to start standing in his own truth. That doesn't mean being rigid. It doesn't mean being a jerk or being unkind. It just means being clear, even if it's uncomfortable. My homework I gave him was to start doing that. Oftentimes, your wife will actually start to relax because she no longer has to carry an emotional weight for the both of you. But you have to take full responsibility for what you say to yourself. This is where you really begin to transform when you stop waiting for your wife to say that you're not crazy or that you didn't say anything wrong or you're allowed to feel that way. You don't need that permission. You start giving yourself permission. So each morning, tell yourself, here's what I'm feeling. Here's what I need. Here's what I know to be true, even if others disagree. And you practice sitting in discomfort without spiraling into shame. And then you can tell yourself, hey, you know what? It's okay to not be perfect. Imperfectly perfect. I love that phrase. I can make decisions without everyone having to agree with them. I trust myself. Now that's going to take a little bit of time, but if you practice that steady, over time, consistently, you're going to start showing up with less apology and more presence. Because when you become a man who trusts your own voice, other people will trust you too. If you want people to respect you, they will never respect you until you respect yourself. If you want people to trust you, they will never trust you until you trust yourself. People meet us at our level of self-connection, whatever that is. So when you become a man who trusts his own gut, not because he's always right, this is not being narcissistic or being a know-it-all, but he knows that if he is wrong, he can handle it. But if he feels deep in his core with integrity that a situation is not right, he can speak that with confidence. It's not arrogance, it's not perfectionism, it's just calm, grounded leadership. So I told my guy, when you get to a point where you can say, hey, I may not get this perfect, but I'm going to speak with honesty and strength anyway. That energy will change the dynamic in the home. And then you can start leading conversations instead of walking on eggshells. You guide decisions without chasing validation. You start being yourself, your authentic, true self without second-guessing every word. And the people around you will notice. But more importantly, you will notice. You'll notice a sense of peace. Because you're going to still have moments of doubt, but now you know where it's coming from and you don't let it run the show anymore. And when you embody that, your secure self shines through. Because if you're always second-guessing yourself, it's time to stop shaming. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not weak. You're not crazy. You're not broken. You just haven't learned how to stand in your truth yet because you were conditioned. But that's what this journey is about. It's not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming whole and authentic. And you can speak with clarity and lead with peace and build self-trust that's solid. Hey, I hope this podcast was helpful for you. If you're a regular listener, would you give me a review so other men can find this podcast and heal? Subscribe if you don't already. Share this podcast with someone who you think may need to hear this. If you need help getting unstuck, visit securehusband.com and set up a free 30-minute consultation with me. A no-pressure conversation. I'll see you again on the next Secure Husband podcast. Thanks for listening.